VR is awesome, but it has one big limitation that keeps us from taking it to the next level, and that is, how do we move in virtual reality? Luckily, this problem might finally be solved thanks to a brand new VR treadmill that honestly looks like it's coming straight out of Ready Player One. Now, ever since the first VR headset came out, we have always used standard controllers that eventually got upgraded over the years to more streamlined versions. But in the end, we are still using thumbsticks or other methods like teleportation to actually move inside VR. And although these headsets are getting huge upgrades like more pixels, better frame rates, and even some crazy features, we are still super limited in how far we can walk and run while using them, basically making it a beefed out console with a screen attached to your face. So that is where VR treadmills come in, with the biggest problem right now that they normally cost so much money that you could almost start your own religion with it. But first, for those people who don't know, what exactly is a VR treadmill? In definition, it is a way to walk inside virtual reality just like you would in real life, while your physical body remains practically in the same position. And even though that sounds like something futuristic, it has actually been possible for already a couple of years. And as you might already know, one of the biggest companies inside this space is none other than Catwalk. So that is why it was such big news that they announced their brand new version called the C2 Core. And even more amazing is that I got to try it out for myself, so I can help you guys decide if this is really worth it for you. But first, it is also important to know why this is such a big deal. Because thanks to these big limitations that standard VR headsets have, most VR games are now also specifically made for smaller rooms or as a standing and sitting experience, even causing creators to not go all out or make any big VR worlds, since most likely people would not actually be able to explore it anyways. And this creates a negative loop where both VR headsets cannot solve the locomotion problem, and neither will there be VR content made, like games, to give it a reason to actually solve the problem in the first place. And secondly, although this might be called a VR treadmill, in reality there are no actual moving parts. Although there are some insane exceptions, like the infinadeck, these are not even close to being consumer ready, and might never actually make it to the market. So although Ready Player One looked like an absolute amazing blast, do not expect to get this kind of experience just yet. Instead, these VR treadmills use an alternative that still lets you walk and run, but without the problems of moving parts, since it uses this smooth surface that is shaped like a bowl, creating a sliding mechanism while you are making your steps. That means you will also have to wear some specific shoes that come with this package. And though it might look easy at first, it definitely requires some getting used to. And the technology behind it is not that complicated, actually using something similar like the optical mouses we had in the past. And by checking where you plant your feet and at what speed you do so, the sensors that are built into the shoes will then be able to translate that movement inside your VR game. And all of this, of course, at a fraction of the time, so that you don't notice any delay between walking in real life and the step that you just took. But let's talk about the setup. First of all, building up your VR treadmill is surprisingly easy, with a step-by-step guide that you can follow that even my peanut brain can actually comprehend it. So although you will have it set up in no time, an important thing to keep in mind is that it is super heavy. So make sure you have it planned out where you want to put it down before you set it completely up. But once you put all the Lego pieces together, the next step is the software. And this as well is very quickly and easy to do. Just follow the guide that they provide, and I don't think anything can go wrong. Besides, once you've set it up, both on the hardware and software side, you won't have to repeat this progress every single time, making it possible to super easily jump into your experience. So now that that is all behind, you can put on your shoes and strap yourself in. And while using it for myself, I have never felt unsafe, because the belt is made out of high quality and keeps you secure in place, even so much that when you do fall, it can support your entire weight. And another little attention to detail is the shoes itself, because these can be changed to level of friction, making it either easier or more difficult to slide across the surface. Though it is highly recommended you keep the highest resistance possible in the beginning, because you're definitely gonna slide across it a couple times before your legs are getting completely used to it. But that gets us to the compatibility. This is probably the most overlooked and most important feature before you buy any VR treadmill, because you want to make sure that you can actually play the games that you love on the VR headset that you own. So it is great to know that Cat VR supports virtually anything, from every single game available on Steam VR to all VR headsets that support it. That means your Quest headsets, as well as the Valve Index or even the more rare HTC Vives. This probably also makes my biggest plus for Cat VR, since you don't need to worry about which games are available or not. And although that might sound obvious to you, this isn't the case for other VR treadmills on the market, so please make sure to inform yourself about this before pulling the trigger. So next up is the actual experience. When you first step foot on this treadmill, you will feel like you're kind of sliding across a lake of ice. But just like learning any new skill, you will get used to it a lot faster if you give yourself some proper time. And even when you're an absolute pro, I do not recommend taking out all of these straps unless you want to have to risk to fall on your face pretty much every step you take. Now the walking itself also is not completely the same that you're used to in real life. But one thing that you will notice and might put you off a bit is that for longer gaming sessions, it can get super intense. This is of course due to you running and walking everywhere instead of just sitting on your couch and pressing a button. And although like previously mentioned that every game is compatible, it doesn't mean that you should also play every game on this VR treadmill. While your standard single player open world games are absolutely a must, it is not recommended to play some high intensity multiplayer, because when fighting against others, your VR treadmill will probably make you slower than people that are just pressing a button. Not only that, you will physically get so much more tired and be limited by your surroundings compared to those who are not using it. So if you are mainly focused on competitive VR gameplay, then this might not be your best bet. Besides, when playing those high intensity games, you will also notice the limits that you can go to. While the catwalk tries to give you as much freedom as possible, in the end, you are still strapped into a machine. So on these high levels, you can notice that certain small movements are not completely possible. That said, they did make some big improvements compared to their previous VR treadmills, where now you can completely crouch down or even jump if you want to. But where it absolutely does shine is when you boot up a big open world game. Think about jumping into something like Zenith, and you will quickly realize that this can really take VR to the next level, because running, walking, and exploring the world feels so much more realistic and amazing than just standing straight and pressing the forward thumbstick. It's even so good that these are the moments I realize why I love virtual reality so much. It kind of gave me the feeling of when I put a virtual reality headset on for the very first time. And yet another amazing feature that many people actually don't know is that you can move your body independently inside VR. To simplify it, if you would just have your basic headset and controllers and move your head around, your arms would automatically move with you, even though your body might be still standing straight in real life. But with the catwalk, you can move around with your legs, your upper body, or just your head individually, while all the other parts stay in the same position that they are in reality. And honestly, I didn't even think about this beforehand, but only when you experience it do you realize how cool this addition really is. Now clearly, this is mostly meant for those who love some AAA big games. Think about Skyrim, Bone Lab, or even No Man's Sky. Now they also have many other options of VR treadmills, with some much more expensive, but also with crazier features, like haptic feedback or an upgraded version with a seat, so that you can also experience things like horse riding or sitting inside a car. Secondly, they also have other products that try to solve the same problem. Think about their Cat Loco S. Instead of having that bulky VR treadmill in your living room, these are just some simple sensors that you can click on and start moving in VR. Of course, this does mean that you're basically moving in place and won't get the actual feeling of running or walking like you would with the real thing. But still, I also think this is a great alternative at a much lower price cost and being a lot more portable. But talking about price, the C2 Core will come in at a reduced cost of $899. And while this might still be close to what a Valve Index costs, it is still shockingly less than any of its competition. So let's talk about some positive and negatives before you make your final decision. On the bright side, the price, although not for everybody, is super competitively charged if you are in the market for a VR treadmill. Secondly, all VR headsets and Steam VR games are completely compatible, so you won't have to worry about what games you can or can't play, with the biggest focus on those AAA games like Zenith, VRchat, or even Skyrim. And the third, but maybe not much talked about positive, is that it will also burn a lot of calories and actually might you even help getting into shape. But we also have some downsides. Of course, it does still cost some money and takes up quite a lot of space in your living room that you can't just move around quickly. Secondly, the shoes are very personal and mostly only in one size. That means you won't always be able to share it with friends or family. And last but not least, it is not a perfect simulation of walking or running inside virtual reality and should be seen more as sort of a sliding mechanism that will start to feel much more natural as you practice with it over time. So that gets us to the final conclusion. And should you buy this new VR treadmill? Now, while there are definitely some downsides, I truly did not expect this to be such a game changer for myself, because the games I really loved now felt like they finally came to life as if I was trying it out for the very first time. And besides the price, weight, and size. I do think it is a great step for the future of VR, and hopefully it can also break us out of that loop from getting only standard VR experiences and finally getting some more big open world games. But should you buy it? I think that if you are a VR veteran that wants to get the best VR experience that money can buy, or if you are a hardcore AAA game fan that only plays those open world titles and wants to get some physical activity while gaming, then this is definitely worth it. But for those who just got their first VR headset and are not sure about their dedication to virtual reality, or those who don't have the actual space or funds for it, it might be better to skip this option for now. Although I would still recommend checking out some alternatives like the Cat Loco S, so that you can still experience the amazing world of walking inside virtual reality. But that's not all. We also had some other big VR news, so click on the video you see on screen right now to make sure you don't miss out.